Hello and welcome to today's video, and today I'm going to be talking about something that me and a lot of people have noticed that is sort of a common trend with B&M dive coasters, and that is why do a lot of B&M dive coasters all have the same or very similar layouts. Now if you don't know what a B&M dive coaster is, imagine something like Oblivion at Alton Towers. A dive coaster is a roller coaster where its main sort of feature, its main purpose is to have a drop of over 90 degrees. And there's a point where the trains are quite compact trains, only like usually 2 or 3 rows, but they're very wide trains as well, and there's usually literally the signature moment on dive coasters is the point where it's at the highest point of the ride and it's sort of like it holds you over the edge of the drop for a few seconds and it drops you down. And the first ever dive coaster to ever built was Oblivion at Alton Towers. Now because this was the prototype dive coaster, it means that there were a number of differences between Oblivion and what we see nowadays. First thing, because Oblivion does not have spring-loaded wheels, it means that the drop is not actually vertical, it is only 87.5 degrees. And secondly, because Oblivion is built in quite a small area, and as such, it is only seems to be able to have just the one drop and then the ride is over. They probably could have extended the layout a little bit, but considering the whole theme of it's an experiment to test the limits of the human body and mind, the one drop and then that's it. It's probably just the perfect layout for Oblivion. And if they added like other elements to it, it'll probably be overselling the ride a little bit. I don't know, but that's just my opinion anyway. As for other dive coasters that came afterwards, a clone of Oblivion was actually built in Taiwan, I believe, called Diving Machine G5, and is actually a mirror image clone of Oblivion, and it's also built above ground, so you can actually see just how big that 180-foot drop actually is. But since then, there have been much bigger, longer, and faster dive coasters built all around the world. Several dive coasters have broken the 200-foot barrier, but one thing they're all in common is that the layouts haven't really changed that much since they started having longer layouts. I mean, Oblivion and Diving Machine G5, yeah, they're clones of each other, but like they're quite rare in terms of actual dive coasters layouts nowadays. Because nowadays with a dive coaster layout, you can typically expect after the drop it'll go into like some sort of Illumin, maybe a second inversion, possibly, and then a helix, followed by maybe a mid-course break, a little drop, probably maybe another inversion or helix, and an airtime hill, and then the ride is pretty much over. And they've been following this same sort of trend for the past like 20 odd years with B&M dive coasters. Things like SheiKra, Busch Gardens Tampa, Griffon, Iron Menace, which is the newest B&M dive coaster, Valkyria, Valravn, Yukon Striker, literally many dive coasters all having very, very similar layouts. And it's even been noted by other enthusiasts online and around the world, basically saying how come B&M, they typically use like the same sort of formula for like the type of layout they want to build with dive coasters, and there's usually not many points on the ride where they do something like unique for a dive coaster. But why is this? Why do they always tend to have the same sort of like formulaic method for the B&M dive coaster layout? Now I think I've got a pretty reasonable theory as to why they do this. It's to usually, since B&M dive coasters, and imagine for B&M, are pretty easy to sell for a theme park, but obviously because B&M, they're not a cheap manufacturer at all, they are quite expensive. But usually what B&M try to do, and I'm not sure, and this isn't just exclusively for dive coasters, this is from the majority of their coaster types up until recently, I think they know that if B&M, if they sell a roller coaster to one of their customers, i.e. like a theme park, I don't know, like Alton Towers or Dorney Park or wherever, and it has a layout that they can recognise that they know will be successful, then it'll be able to sell a lot more dive coasters. It's basically just like saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they clearly have like a really good idea as to a good way of selling dive coasters to a customer, because they know that if they sell it like how they have been for the past 20 odd years, then they'll be able to sell them like sort of successfully, and they'll make plenty of money off of it. Because imagine you've just built the world's tallest dive coaster, which has a layout very similar to Iron Menace or Yukon Striker, and then another theme park asks you for a dive coaster, and you give them a layout that resembles that of, oh I don't know, a Mack multi-launch coaster, just without a launch and with a lifter instead. They're going to be very confused as to why you've completely changed the layout of the dive coaster. And yeah, I suppose they've not been completely formulaic. They've tried to shake things up a little bit in the past couple of years by building dive coasters with beyond vertical drops. It all started with Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas back in 2022, which has a 95-degree drop. And then they built Iron Menace earlier this year at Dorney Park, and now they're building another one in one of the Six Flags parks, and it has a name that I cannot pronounce, or I don't know. But yeah, and that one has a 96-degree drop. So I suppose they're getting a bit more, they're shaking things up with like the drop elements, and I think at the same time they're also trying to focus on smaller dive coaster layouts as well. Because yes, the B&M, the 200-foot ones that they've built over like the 2000s and 2010s, yes, they were big and impressive, but a lot of people complained that literally the layouts were just forceless and didn't lack it. They sort of lacked any sort of intense forces like airtime or anything like that. So, and with the smaller layouts, it means they're more compact and the elements are more tight, which means a lot more like horizontal and vertical G-forces are experienced. But like I say about using the same sort of formula with them B&M Dive Coasters, it's not just exclusively reserved for dive coasters, this method. Up until recently, B&M have pretty much used like the same sort of formulas for each individual coaster model they have. Like look at flying coasters. Yes, like with their prototype with the likes of Galactica, that has a sort of unique layout that's reserved for that one ride, but most flying coasters that were built after that all tend to have this very similar layout with odd few like fly-to-line, line-to-fly elements and the pretzel loop and all those kinds of elements. Same with wing coasters as well, like since like the Swarm opened and Raptor at Gardenline, it's always got the dive drop and the incline loop and all kinds of elements like that with corkscrews and inline twists. It's only up until recently that B&M have really started to be a bit more creative with their roller coaster layouts. Not only building roller coasters of they're taking their ride types that they already have and building them on different scales so that it can reach more age demographics, like for like family coasters, but also making a lot more launch coasters as well, because up until recently B&M launch coasters are actually quite rare. Like the first launch coaster they ever built was the Incredible Hulk at Universal's Islands of Adventure, and then after that they did not build another one until 2015 with Thunderbird at Holiday World, which is a wing coaster, so that was the first for them. But now they're tending to build a lot more launch coasters, specifically more launch wing coasters with Mandrill Mayhem at Chessington and Rapterra at King's Dominion, and also more family coasters as well with the likes of Phoenix Rising at Busch Gardens Tampa, which is a B&M invert, but it's also a family coaster and even has lap bars. So yes, a lot of dive coasters, they do tend to have pretty predictable layouts, but considering that B&M are now being a lot more creative with their products, do you think this will change in the near future? We'll have to wait and see. So I want to thank you all very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it then please make sure to like and subscribe, and comment what you would like to see in the next video. Goodbye.